My brother vanished into thin air, along with every last cent. Instead, I stood against the hard wooden dock, staring down the charges he somehow made mine. I felt like I was drowning, while the weight of his choices clawed at my throat, searching for breath. That moment still haunts me, like a vivid nightmare gnawing at the edges of my sanity. My brother, my own flesh and blood, orchestrated a betrayal so profound that it shattered every illusion I had held about family loyalty. He vanished, taking with him a staggering loan, and left me entangled in a web of deceit crafted entirely by his hands. The court summons arrived with my name on it, and the shock was a physical sensation, a hollow pit in my chest opening wide. Everything started to crumble, like a house of cards rigged from the start. How could someone so close burn every bridge without a flicker of doubt? Alone, I stood on the precipice of ruin, anger and betrayal coursing through my veins like poison. As the enormity of the betrayal sunk in, my brother had sacrificed our bond for his gain. The phone buzzed in my pocket, vibrating against my leg with a persistence I couldn't ignore. When I pulled it out, his name flashed across the screen, and a knot formed in my stomach. I slid my thumb across to answer, the anticipation and unease rolling over me like an incoming tide. His voice cut through the static and the distance, that familiar mix of warmth and tension. "I need you," he said, each word jagged like broken glass. It wasn't just a typical request. It held the weight of something more, something teetering on the brink of collapse. "What's going on?" I asked, attempting to sound casual, disguising the worry that crawled up my spine. "It's complicated," he replied, his voice faltering, dropping into a whisper, as if confiding a secret he barely trusted the universe to keep. I could hear it, the catch in his breath. This wasn't just another one of his wild ventures or half-baked schemes. This was different. A deeper urgency bled through the line. Still, the unease simmered. I wanted to trust him, but the shadow of our history loomed there, unspoken. "I have this opportunity," he continued, words spilling out faster now, as if speed alone could conceal their fragility. "It's a business deal. Big payout, minimal risk. I need a cosigner." There was a pause, long enough for the weight of his request to settle between us. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't crucial. His desperation reached through the phone and wrapped around me, squeezing tight. A cacophony of thoughts clattered through my head. His dreams of grandeur, those grand promises that never quite panned out. But underneath it all, beneath the layers of doubt, he was my brother. He had always been there, through scraped knees and whispered secrets under the covers. "So you want me to co-sign?" I asked softly, trying to sift through his urgency, the trust we had, against the nagging voice that warned of loans and debts and ties too tight to sever. "Yes," he breathed, relief lacing his words. "This could change everything for us, give us the break we need." I wanted to believe it, to see past the worry threading through my mind and trust in our bond. Those memories of brotherhood, of shared laughter and dreams, flickered like old photographs. He was asking for a lifeline, for my faith to anchor him. "All right," I found myself saying, before doubt could take full root. "Let's do it." His gratitude rode the other end of the call, poignant and real. Yet, as the line clicked dead, a gnawing apprehension lingered, clutching at my insides. The room felt suddenly chillier, my hand still warm where it held the phone. I stared at it, wondering which of us had crossed a line we couldn't see. The pen felt heavier with each stroke, dragging my apprehension across the page, as if embedding my fate in permanent ink. I sat there, the hum of fluorescent lights pressing in from above. Each tap of the pen on the desk next to me, like a countdown, ticked against my tightening nerves. Papers populated every surface, a sea of fine print in a language all its own, and though I tried to focus, the words tangled and blurred, turning abstract and hostile. The loan officer adjusted his glasses, his face set in a mask of professionalism, yet somehow impassive enough to make me feel foolish. I glanced at him, seeking something, reassurance, a hint of empathy, but found only a well-rehearsed nod, as if to say, "Get on with it." Beside me, he shifted, his leg bouncing lightly under the wooden table. I wondered if he was as excited as I'd been the first time he brought up the idea. The idea that together, we could both rise, lift our dreams right out of the ground. My fingers tensed around the pen, the the plastic growing warm from my grip. My signature looked foreign as it materialized across the page, a name that no longer felt entirely my own. With each line I endorsed, the weight multiplied, an insidious growth in my gut that promised repercussions I couldn't yet forecast. My trust in him had always been instinctual and complete, but seated here, beneath the stony gaze of accountability, that trust wrestled with a surge of doubt. The air was heavy with the scent of old paper and synthetic heat, the ventilation system coughing somewhere behind a faded ceiling tile. I heard him clear his throat, a subtle signal breaking through my fog of hesitancy. His voice was smooth and practiced, slicing through the room's quiet atmosphere. Once we're done here, you'll see. It's going to be good for us. For you. A part of me longed to believe him, to wrap myself in his certainty and let it shield me from the razor-edged possibilities lurking just beyond these signatures. But a flutter in my chest kept growing, like a bird trapped in a cage suddenly too small, wings striking bars with desperate futility. It was more than just money, or maybe exactly that, but I felt a shift within, a fear of being tumbled into a life beyond my control. I hesitated, eyes trailing over another line where his name already lay, bold and definitive. As if sensing my pause, he placed his hand over mine, just a fleeting touch of warmth, then gone again. I met his gaze, and for an instant, I saw something spark there. Anticipation, excitement, hope perhaps. His trust in me. It tethered me just as surely as any kind of pen or paper. With a deep breath, I signed the last page, aware of each cramped letter. It felt like an unraveling and a tethering all at once, decisions stitched together beneath the weight of promises and risk. I released the breath I hadn't realized I was holding, the pen slipping from my fingers. Once done, an electric charge ran through me, coiling tight and promising no way back. By the third day, the silence was no longer just an absence. It was a living entity, consuming every room in my home. Every time I glanced at my phone, a fresh spear of anxiety plunged through me, sharper each time the screen remained dark and lifeless. I called him again, almost as a reflex now, and the familiar click of his voicemail robbed me of any pretense of calm. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, as if sheer force of will could carry my words through the ether to him. "Hey, it's me. Call me back, okay? I'm getting worried." My voice was steady, betraying none of the hysteria bubbling beneath my skin. Each word felt inadequate, a flimsy bandage over a wound too deep to heal on its own. I carried on with the routine of life. Work, groceries, the banal exchange of smiles and nods. But each task was a shadow play, and my mind was elsewhere, caught in a loop of the unspoken. Images of him, familiar and haunting, flickered whenever I closed my eyes. Maybe he was simply busy. Maybe he dropped his phone in a puddle or left it at some friend's house. Innocuous explanations that seemed flimsier with every passing hour. My brother wasn't the type to disappear like this, not without a word, a text, a sign. He was the one who checked in on me, mostly concerning himself with whether I'd eaten or if I'd remembered to breathe. His silence was a cold, creeping fog that wrapped around my thoughts, suffocating hopes, and leaving behind an alarm that grew each day. During the rare moments the phone broke its stony reserve to chime, my heart ceased to beat until I saw the name, and disappointment pressed like gravity on a fragile atmosphere. I knew something was coming, a storm gathering on the horizon, unseen, yet undeniably felt. My instincts screamed at me to do something, to find him before the silence birthed a monster too big to confront. By the fifth day, desperation made me brave enough to drive to his apartment. Each red light stretched on forever, and every stranger who crossed the intersection seemed to mock my internal turmoil with their insistent normalcy. His door was firm beneath my fists, dull echoes bouncing back into me, emphasizing the void within. I pounded harder, each rap a plea, a demand. "Come on, open up." But only silence accommodated my cries, thickening like a congealed paste. My imagination went wild. He could be lying there, hurt, or worse, gone. Frantic now, I stepped back, sizing up the door, considering just how hard I'd need to kick to force it open. And then, just as my panic threatened to erupt into action, the door swung open from inside. And there he stood, looking as though every unspoken worry had shaped itself into his unkempt hair, his sleep-starved eyes. He was here, but immediately I saw it. The darkness lingering in those eyes, the shadows that now lived there. The moment my fingers brushed against the plain white envelope, an eerie chill looped through my veins, like cold fingers tracing my spine. It lay there on the kitchen counter, blending innocently with the junk mail and grocery coupons, yet something dark whispered from its simplicity. My name, stark and troubling, slanted across its surface. I tore it open carelessly, paper fluttering to the floor like autumn leaves. My gaze flickered over the words, the sanitized language of summons, plaintiff, defendant. My heart stumbled over that last one, that singular term tilting my entire existence askew. Defendant. My name, my life pinned to that word like a specimen under glass. Staring at the crisp, accusatory lettering, my heart unraveled through my fingertips, fear and confusion fighting a losing battle in my gut. There it was, a bold proclamation of betrayal nestled in the heart of legalese. Lies wound tight around every phrase, constricting the air around me. I tried to breathe, despite the panic clawing at my throat. The room twisted, the kitchen shrinking and expanding in waves of disorientation. A dissonant hum filled my ears, my own blood rushing as my brain attempted to grapple with the impossible. How could this be? What sort of cruel, distorted theater had swept me into its plot? I stumbled to a chair, paper clinging to my damp palm. I could feel its feigned righteousness, as if it pulsed with the indignant rage of its accuser. Every detail in the document had been arranged to cut into my sanity, precision-tuned to create maximum damage. Could they know how much this would unravel me, how deeply it struck at my core? I couldn't fathom why. Or rather, I knew why, only too well, but refused to unveil that truth fully to myself. Not yet. Images flashed in my mind. Her face, twisted with disappointment, and something darker, whispered promises now curdled. Memories of happier times, when trust wasn't something double-edged, hazy recollections of laughter and shared dreams. Everything now shadowed by this deepening chasm of betrayal. The rage built like an avalanche, slow at first, then unstoppable, eroding my disbelief, dismantling my bewilderment until it lay bare beneath a scalding clarity. This was war, waged with words rather than weapons, but just as vicious, just as determined to leave nothing untarnished. The paper quivered in my hand, not due to anything other than my own tremors. I pushed myself upright, the chair scraping with a screech that echoed through the silent apartment like a warning shot. I needed air, distance, something to remind me of my own solidity in this surreal distortion. But as I forced open the window, letting the cool breeze wash over me, I knew. This battle, unpredictable and venomous, had just begun. The room was a sanctuary of shadows, with only the streetlight's pale glow sifting through the blinds, drawing lines across the carpet. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the living room still except for the steady tick of the clock on the wall. Papers were strewn around me, whispers captured in ink, bills, receipts, old letters that held our promised futures. The chaos of the room mirrored the storm behind my ribs. I reached out, fingers grazing an envelope from our Paris trip. I remembered the laugh that escaped me when we first stood beneath the Eiffel Tower, his arms steady around my shoulders as he snapped a picture, capturing not just our smiles, but a moment I'd thought was truth. My mind wrestled with this snapshot versus what I now knew. Each crease in that photograph felt like a mocking smile, hinting at the secrets skulking behind his eyes even then. The room seemed to sigh, the weight of unspoken tension filling every corner. I picked up a utility bill, turning it over as if expecting it to reveal a hidden message. I wondered if perhaps there was something I refused to see, a line too conveniently glossed over because trusting him seemed easier. I retraced every moment, seeking signs in the paper ghosts of our shared history, each thought a whisper of accusation turned inward. How could I not have known? The rustling of papers seemed louder, echoing conversations I replayed in my mind, times I'd shrugged off his absences, dissonant facts stitched together with his honeyed lies. I recalled a night I waited, dinner growing cold, while he played at honesty over the phone, his voice smooth as silk. Could I really have been that blind, or was it just too unbearable to face the truth? I dug deeper into the pile, breath catching on an old ticket stub from that movie we'd never seen. He had charmed me with a spontaneous night out, a grand gesture, it seemed, until now. My heart twisted at the realization that every gesture spoke a dual language, one to my hopeful heart and another to his hidden agenda. Outside, traffic drones, a reminder that the world spins on, indifferent to my personal apocalypse. The thought of confronting him sent tendrils of dread curling up my spine, squeezing at the base of my lungs. Yet beneath it simmered a quiet rage, honing my resolve even as fear trembled my hands. The enigma of his deceit was a shadow cast over our years together, and with each sundering realization, the darkness only deepened. I set the last paper aside, its edges marked by uncertainty, yet the path ahead clear in determination. In the hollow silence that followed, a quiet vow resonated within me. If he could fracture the dream we'd crafted so meticulously, then I would find a way to piece together a truth untold, one destined to illuminate not just his betrayal, but the path I must forge alone. The air in the courtroom clung to my skin like static, heavy and suffocating. My eyes were fixed on the worn wooden bench where the fate of my name balanced on the edge of delicacy. Each breath seemed to echo in the silence, a reminder that I was still here, still fighting. But the fight felt distant, as if my arms were bound by invisible chains. The judge presided over the courtroom with cold authority, her gaze dissecting me from a universe away. "This court is now in session," she declared, her voice resonating across the room. It vibrated in my bones and settled uncomfortably in my gut, a hammer striking my soul with every word spoken. My heart pounded loudly, a dissonant symphony of dread. My brother's presence loomed large even in his absence. His lies twisted around me like an executioner's noose, tightening with every piece of evidence brought before the court. Statements, signatures, dates, a tapestry of deceit weaved meticulously, all leading straight back to me. I felt like a ghost in my own life, my truth invisible beneath the heavy tapestry of his betrayals. The lawyer assigned to me exchanged whispers with the opposing side like leaves rustling in the autumn breeze, their voices murky underwater echoes. My gaze dropped to my hands resting on the table, knuckles white beneath the pressure of my own grip. A prison of silence wrapped around me, binding my tongue with a choker of fear and incredulity. "Will the defendant please rise?" The words were a trigger, a silent command that pulled my strings into action. I stood, feet anchored to the ground, yet feeling as if I were wading through quicksand. The eyes of the courtroom bore into me like a million judgmental suns, withering hope with their relentless glare. As the prosecutor began their litany of accusations, words twisted into a narrative I couldn't recognize as my own. Each one was a stab wound, skillfully placed to draw blood without mercy. My brother's ghost lingered, reveling in the chaos he left behind, each accusation a reminder of the trust one misplaced in him. I swallowed hard, battling the rising bile. The gavel struck again, echoing in finality. "Adjourned," the judge concluded. The room's collective breath released, a single organism exhaling all at once. Yet I remained trapped, tethered to the courtroom floor by the weight of their disbelief. The hustle around me melted into a blur, and my pulse throbbed in my ears like an insistent drumbeat. As the crowd dispersed, their whispers hung in the air like a persistent fog. I clung to my composure, the thin armor I wore against the storm within. Each step out of the courtroom felt like a descent, leading me back into a world where trust was a phantom and all that remained was the echo of betrayal. Their eyes held words they left unspoken, a silent jury deliberating my guilt amidst feigned smiles and sympathy. The small living room buzzed with forced chatter, the kind where everyone's trying too hard to fill the silence. I stood in the center, feeling like a lion in a cage, each step I took met with a cautious eye. These were my friends, my family. But this gulf between us, made them strangers. My mom hovered nearby, her hand squeezing my shoulder, like if she squeezed hard enough, she could press the truth out of me. Or maybe it was meant to assure me she still saw me as her son. Her embrace, too gentle, the pause just a second too long, told of her uncertainties. She asked, "How are you holding up, honey?" while her eyes searched mine for any sign of a fracture. In the corner, David, my best friend since grade school, filled the room with his booming laughter that felt like a thinly veiled attempt to lighten the atmosphere. "You know, Remember when you tried to convince me that UFOs were real? Just like that time. I'm here for you. Even when you're full of shit, he joked, but his gaze flickered to others for any sign of approval, his loyalty cracking under the pressure of public opinion. Shirley, my sister, sat at the edge of the couch, her eyes glued to her phone, pretending to scroll but really just avoiding everyone's eyes. She was always the pragmatic, no-nonsense one. You know they're just doing their job, right? She had said earlier, part defense, part accusation. If you'd just been straightforward, this whole thing could have been avoided. The murmurs of others blended, voices tiptoeing around the elephant in the room, cautious not to stampede over each other. I forced myself to breathe, in and out, focusing on the warmth of the mug in my hand, the comforting scent of chamomile doing very little to calm the chaos inside me. Suddenly, Aunt Louise, ever candid, approached. Her hushed, secretive tones sliced through the clamor. Just tell us, honestly, is there anything else we should know? Her words sank like stones, pulling all eyes to me, the communal air holding its breath. I felt a tightening in my chest, each heartbeat a reminder of the truth that loomed larger than life. I wanted to shout, to curse at the injustice of being suspected, to retreat into the safety of solitude rather than endure their scrutiny. But instead, I offered the only thing I had, a cracked smile. If there were, Aunt Louise, you'd be the first to know. Their gazes weighed heavily on me, sticky like hot tar. I shifted my feet, feeling the ground beneath me as if it might give way at any moment, leaving me to tumble into the abyss they collectively imagined. And in that moment, surrounded yet alone, I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding to clear up. It was a storm I needed to survive. The detective's presence hung heavy like a storm about to break. His coat was damp from the drizzle outside, a detail I noted as if it mattered, as if that would somehow anchor me in the trivial. Anything to keep my mind from thrashing in the unknown abyss where my brother had vanished. I offered him tea with hands that barely trembled, a small victory in the chaos of my reality. He declined, just nodded and settled into the sagging armchair, bringing with him an air of grim authority that somehow seemed more real than the disheveled room around us. You've been through a lot, he began, his voice rough but oddly gentle, like an apology from a stranger. I felt like a child being soothed before a painful truth. My eyes stayed on him, unblinking, as if I could pull the truth into focus if I tried hard enough. We've got some information, he continued. Your brother, it seems, might have slipped through the net and gone abroad. His words fell like lead, offering a bitter solace that my brother was no phantom, yet too distant a specter to ever reach again. The notion teased at resolution but mocked the idea of justice, my mind snagging on the jagged edges of what that meant. Where? The single word slipped from me, barely a whisper, but it felt like a scream lodged in my throat. My heart thudded, a drumbeat of confused relief and helplessness. I needed more, something concrete to hold on to. We're not entirely certain yet, he said carefully, his eyes meeting mine with an earnest frustration. Possibly somewhere in Europe. There's evidence he used a false identity. We're following leads. Behind his calm, placating gaze, a universe swirled where my brother existed in fragments. He might be living, breathing in a distant city, while I was left with nothing but his fading echo. The room seemed to close in around me, walls pressing to crush the unbearable silence brought on by his absence. The detective stood to leave, and the movement startled me back into the moment. We'll keep in touch, he promised, more words that fell flat in their inadequacy. If there's anything else, I'll personally make sure you hear it first. As he reached the door, I finally found my voice again, though it felt small. What do I do? It was a question too big for any one answer. He paused, offered a sad, knowing smile. We're still figuring it out. Just hold on. And then he was gone, leaving me with the rain pattering against the window, each drop a reminder of plans washed away and bridges to my brother submerged in the flood of our fractured past. I felt a crackle of static, an echo of hope mixed with frustration, swirling just out of reach, a beacon flickering uncertainly in the vast dark. My hands tremble against the polished wood of the desk, each finger tracing the grain like it's a lifeline, a path I can follow out of this mess. The room is dim, just the pale glow from the desk lamp piercing the gloom. It pools over the scattered papers, proof of every lie unraveling the weave of my once-knit life. I stare at the mess until my eyes burn and the corners of the pages blur into a constellation of half-truths and deceit. Despite everything, there's a strange calm in accepting this solitary moment. I yank open a drawer, pulling out the laptop, its keys worn and familiar under my fingertips. The log screen flashes on, his smiling face capturing the two of us from a happier time. It gnaws at me, how that image still feels sacred. My chest tightens, constricting like a vice, but I'm beyond yearning for the past. Now, I just need to sift through it. I vowed to find strength between the lines of deception he'd etched into my life, even if the truth felt like ashes in my mouth. Resolute, defiant, it's the only promise left worth keeping. So I inhaled deeply, tasting the stale air saturated with hope mixed with the metallic tang of betrayal. Clattering keystrokes break the suffocating silence, each click like a heartbeat, steadying, rhythmic. I sort through emails, receipts, each click peeling back another layer of his facade. Out there, the bonds I thought indestructible lay shattered. Family, friends caught in the crossfire of his secrets. Still, sorting out his mess from my life isn't just an act of redemption, it's all I have now. My phone buzzes, a muted vibration skittering across the desk. A text from a number I've not seen light up in weeks. Every nerve in my body urges to ignore it, to silence the world and exist within the safe cocoon of solitary accountability, but instinct presses me to pick it up. Hey, I'm here if you need to talk. One message filled with so much unsaid. I picture my sister's face, see the mixture of pity and worry etched across her features as she typed. We've drifted, alienated by my misguided loyalties, her declarations of concern falling on my stubborn ears. But the offer holds a kind of warmth I can't deny, a flicker amidst the ashes. But now isn't the moment for reconciliation. There's this thing that must be done first, a truth I need to untangle before facing more than just the pixels on a screen. I glance up, catching my reflection in the dark window opposite, eyes determined, jaw set firm. Slowly, I type back one-handed, gonna fix this. Maybe after? The cursor blinks back at me, an unsteady metronome beating against the hush, marking time until resolution comes calling, and I muster the courage to truly start afresh. For now, I turn back to the glowing screen, weaving through digital threads of his mendacity, inching closer to unmasking everything lost in the shadows. The letter came on a Wednesday, hidden beneath the usual stack of bills and flyers that clung together like damp leaves. There it was, my brother's familiar, arrogant scrawl bleeding through the envelope. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat as I slid a finger under the flap, the paper tearing more sharply than expected, like some long-sealed wound suddenly split open. I unfolded it with unsteady hands, the thin sheets whispering their contents into the silence of my living room. His words fluttered from the pages like wounded butterflies, desperate to be heard, yet so fragile they could barely carry the weight of his remorse. I'm sorry, it began. The ink dragged heavy in places, as if he tested the gravity of the word before writing it down, knowing full well its inadequacy. My eyes hovered over the lines, reluctant to fully embrace the familiar cadences of his voice, resurrected through these desperate strokes of ink. His apologies stretched on, each trying to stitch together something already frayed beyond repair. He spoke of the chaos he'd wrought into our lives, the cavernous gap he'd dug between us with each betrayal, each lie whispered in shadows and secrets. He laid out his reasons, small justifications lined up like fragile dominoes. One touch, and they'd all tumble back into incoherence. But something inside me refused them. I recognized the melody of his sorrow, a tune I'd danced to too many times, and yet it did nothing to mend the fractured skies overhead. I let my fingers trace over the creases of the paper absently. Bits of dust clung to my fingertips, as if even the letter itself held the residue of forgotten promises and unkept bonds. He wanted absolution, a cleanse perhaps, from the sins that twined tightly around our shared history. I sat there, trying to untangle the mess of emotions that sprawled across my chest like a constricting vine. Was it forgiveness he sought, or simply my permission to let him return like the prodigal? The blurry line between forgiveness and folly danced before my mind's eye, teasing and taunting. Could one exist without the other? The late afternoon sun dipped low, streaking the room in a warm yellow glow, casting elongated shadows that seemed to echo my swirling thoughts, grounding me momentarily. I folded the letter again, carefully now, as if gentleness alone could somehow preserve whatever scraps of brotherhood we still held tightly in trembling hands. A small sigh escaped me. The damage was irreparable, yes, but maybe there lay some peace in acknowledging that finality. I glanced back at the words once more, one final time, before slipping the envelope into the drawer beside me, a quiet resignation settling upon my shoulders. For all his apologies, all his attempts at justification, the letter couldn't alter the course of what had passed. But perhaps it planted a seed of closure, one that might yet grow into something unknown, a fragile hope, an uncharted path of self-discovery. The storm of his redemption remained his alone to weather. And for the first time, strangely, that was enough.